Hello and welcome to Finish in 5 on A Christmas Carol. Now this is the first of 5 videos. Each video is going to focus on a different extract from the text, with each extract linking to a key moment. The idea is that by working through all 5 of them, and each one being about 10 minutes or so, you'll be able to cover essentially the complete narrative of the text and get a good understanding and engagement with the whole narrative arc. So let's start with what's happened so far. Essentially what's happened in the lead up to the extract that we're looking at today. Now the novel opened with the death of Scrooge's business partner, his only friend, Jacob Marley. And also the fact that Scrooge really wasn't particularly upset by his death. He was even doing business on the day of the funeral. Even years later, Scrooge hadn't really bothered to paint out Marley's name on the sign, and also seemed equally happy to answer to either name, Scrooge or Marley. Now, Scrooge, in Stave 1, was then described both physically and socially. He's a cold man in every sense. He's antisocial. We were presented with Scrooge in his counting house, along with his clerk, Bob. It was cold, dark, foggy. Now, Scrooge's nephew, Fred, arrived, and as he did every year, tried to persuade Scrooge to join him for Christmas dinner. And Scrooge, as he does every year, rejected him, dismissing Christmas as a humbug. Scrooge also rejected some charity collectors and complained bitterly at Bob, expecting to have Christmas off with his family. Scrooge returned home by himself, and it was when he was alone in his dark, dusty house that a ghost appeared. Just as a quick note, don't forget, in the yellow box on the right-hand side every time, there's a key bullet points that are summarising the key things that are on each slide. So what about the extract we're looking at today? Well, in this extract, Scrooge begs the ghost of his old business partner, Jacob Marley, why it's bothering him. The ghost compares its own situation with Scrooge's, and also with what will happen after Scrooge's death. Now remember, in terms of the structure of the novel, we have 5 staves. Stave 1, Scrooge at the beginning. Stave 2, Scrooge's past. Stave 3, the present. Stave 4, the future. And Stave 5, Scrooge at the end. Now, if you're struggling to remember when things happen, navigate them just like that. Scrooge at the start and end boxes off staves 1 and 5, and then staves 2, 3, and 4 are simply the past, the present, and the future. Extract 1 from Stave 1. Scrooge fell upon his knees and clasped his hands before his face. "Mercy," he said. "Dreadful apparition, why do you trouble me?" "Man of the worldly mind," replied the ghost, "do you believe in me or not?" "I do," said Scrooge. "I must, but why do spirits walk the earth, and why do they come to me?" "It is required of every man," the ghost returned, "that the spirit within him should walk abroad among his fellow men, and travel far and wide. And if that spirit goes not forth in life, it is condemned to do so after death. It is doomed to wander through the world, oh, woe is me, and witness what it cannot share, but might have shared on earth, and turned to happiness." Again the spectre raised a cry, and shook its chain, and wrung its shadowy hands. "You're fettered," said Scrooge, trembling. "Tell me why?" "Ay, by the chain I forged in life," replied the ghost. "I made it link by link, and yard by yard. I girded it on of my own free will, and of my own free will I wore it. Is its pattern strange to you?" Scrooge trembled more and more. "Or would you know," pursued the ghost, "the weight and length of the strong coil you bear yourself? It was full as heavy and as long as this 7 Christmas Eves ago. You have laboured on it since. It is a ponderous chain." Scrooge glanced about him on the floor, in the expectation of finding himself surrounded by some 50 or 60 fathoms of iron cable, but he could see nothing. "Jacob," he said imploringly. "Oh, Jacob Marley, tell me more. Speak comfort to me, Jacob." "I have none to give," the ghost replied. "It comes from other regions, Ebenezer Scrooge, and is conveyed by other ministers to other kinds of men. Nor can I tell you what I would. A very little more is all permitted to me. I cannot rest. I cannot stay. I cannot linger anywhere. My spirit never walked beyond our counting house. Mark me. In life, My spirit never roved beyond the narrow limits of our money-changing hole, and weary journeys lie before me. Right, let's dissect the extract. So Scrooge begins the extract by falling upon his knees with his hands clasped. It's a clear image of him submitting to the power of the Spirit in an almost prayer-like fashion. And that's replicated in Stave 4 when he meets the ghost of Christmas Yet to Come. He does the same thing. There's a clear juxtaposition between the semantic field associated with the spirit, we get apparition, spirit, ghost, shadowy, and then with the semantic field associated with Scrooge here, man, worldly. To believe is, for Scrooge, a first step away from the physical, from the worldly concerns, and towards a focus more on spiritual and moral things. Notice that Scrooge's concern here is still for himself. Mercy, he begs, and the pronoun choice in I do, I must, come to me. The Spirit's point here is, of course, that everyone has a moral, even a spiritual duty during their lives, to walk abroad among his fellow men. This isn't even about being self-sacrificing. It's about living in the world and seeing the world for what it is, with the assumption being that anyone, Scrooge included, who sees the world would want to help, to make a difference. Scrooge, remember, only seems to move between his business, the melancholy tavern where he eats, and his home. Marley was the same, as the ghost makes very clear, having never walked beyond our counting house. For those who don't, as the Spirit makes clear, they're trapped doing it after death. The difference, of course, being that after death, they cannot make a difference. They can't turn problems to happiness. The chain with which the ghost is fettered is important. To be fettered is to be not just in chains, but to be trapped, to be bound by them. And the chain here is one that the ghost not only made itself during its life, but one where every link is significant, an action or a moment of choice. To forge is to make from metal, and it's the metal of the lockboxes, the padlocks and so on, that have made the chain it now wears, all associated, don't forget, with money, with ownership, with possession. Essentially, the chain is one of choices, and it's the consequence of those choices that's trapping it now. Scrooge's chain, as the ghost points out, was as bad as this one 7 Christmas Eves ago. Now Scrooge obviously asks for some comfort, but the ghost has none to give, since it cannot rest, cannot stay, cannot linger. Essentially, the ghost's punishment after death is a reflection of its actions during life, hence the cry, the woe is me, and the wringing of its shadowy hands. But the biggest punishment is its inability to act on what it now knows. And obviously, Marley here, Scrooge's old, and we assume older, partner, Marley foreshadows Scrooge's own fate. And that's why this needs to be Marley, a parallel to Scrooge. The negative example that he's followed, now a sign of things to come. So in terms of what comes next, just after this extract, Marley warns Scrooge that 3 spirits will be visiting him, and their purpose is to prevent Scrooge meeting the same fate as Marley. Marley departs not long after this moment, and Scrooge sees many, many other ghosts in the same situation, trapped on Earth, unable to have any impact in terms of helping those around them. Stave 1 ends at that point, with Scrooge, exhausted, falling asleep, only to be awakened by the first of the 3 ghosts that he'd been warned about. Now that's more or less it for this particular video. Don't forget there's many other ways of revising and resources to help you do exactly that. There's the recipe book, of course, which is brilliant. There are worked examples in there, writing frames, protagonist profiles, quotation banks, perfect pairings of quotations. There's a wealth of things in there. There's the quotation cards as well. You can see at the bottom left there's an example there. There's the YouTube channel, which is just youtube.com/netenglish1. There are hundreds of videos there covering characters, narrative, all sorts of exciting things. There's also, if you're on Twitter, there's the @net_English_ account, in which there's a daily quotation put out for everyone to help them revise. Right, that's all for now. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll hope to see you in the second of these videos, which will cover Extract 2 from Stave 2.